Welcome to what should be a great discussion today about migrating from legacy content, communication and content management solutions like Documaker to modern communications and content management solutions like communications, like smart communications. My name is Todd Eiler, and I'm the head of marketing at Exavalue. Exavalue is a digital consulting firm that specializes in helping insurance companies to transform, digitally transform, including in areas like CCM. And in today's discussion, we'll cover a few areas that are important to the topic. So we'll talk about some of the key modernization trends with CCM that we're seeing in 2025. The panelists will talk about some of the key metrics or business case inputs that are needed to tee up a migration project like this. We'll talk about some of the key challenges that are faced in migration projects and some of the important best practices from a methodology or process or tools perspective to overcome those challenges. And then also some very kind of compelling case studies about how those best practices have been put into action. We have a great coast-to-coast panel today, joined by Aaron Moore down in Florida from Pekin Insurance. We have Chris Murphy from Atlanta from Smart Communications, VP of Product Marketing. I should have mentioned that Aaron is AVP of Pekin Insurance. And then Nachi Jurkar, who's our head of advisory and consulting services at Exavalue. So if you guys could maybe introduce yourself one by one. Aaron, do you want to go ahead and talk about who you are and what your role is at Pekin?
Yeah, sure. I'm Aaron Moore, and I'm an assistant vice president at Pekin Insurance, over the life IT department and our enterprise architecture. A little bit about Pekin. We've been in business over 100 years, and we're a Midwest kind of medium-sized insurance company that offers financial protection for cars, homes, lives, and businesses in over 22 states.
Chris, take it away.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. Chris Murphy, as mentioned, I'm VP of Product Marketing at Smart Communications. I'm responsible for our go-to-market strategy for the portfolio of our solutions, but really what we'll be focused on today is our customer communications management solution known as SmartCom. Smart Communications as a company, we provide a number of communications-related solutions. And yeah, really happy to be joining the conversation today. I think it's going to be great. Thanks for having me.
Nachi, go ahead. Joining us from Southern California. Take it away.
Hey everyone, my name is Nachikeet Jurgar. I go by Nachi. As Todd mentioned, I head insurance consulting for Exavalue, and as part of that, been involved in several CCM initiatives, product selections, as well as implementations, and then prior to that, have been involved in a couple of CCM implementations as part of Farmers Insurance. I'm really looking forward to the discussion today.
So let's jump into it. Chris, could you maybe kick things off? Could you maybe discuss some of the key trends that you're seeing in CCM modernization this year in 2025?
Yeah, sure. So I think probably what will happen, I'll probably tackle things from a little bit of a more high level before we get a little deeper into Aaron's specific experiences with Pekin and Nachi's experience with the transformations that Exavalue has gone through. I think from a trends standpoint, definitely for the industries we work in, which is primarily insurance, financial services, and healthcare, there really is still a drive to digitally transform. And I think, the driver for CCM migrations in particular, a lot of it is being driven by just the technical debt that's associated with their legacy ecosystems. We often speak with companies, they tell us stories about how their IT infrastructures and ecosystems, they've all evolved over time, right? Very few have been purposefully designed from the ground up. And the legacy challenges that a lot of them have are really beginning to drain on the resources within the company. The expensive system maintenance, the challenges around slow and costly to make changes, the the security posture, the challenges around kind of like, having poor security postures. So definitely the trends that we're seeing are companies are beginning to want to tackle it. And I think that, that's not new. Companies have known that they've had to tackle these issues for quite some time. But they really are getting to almost that tipping point where companies know they have to put a plan into place. And even if they're not acting on those plans right now, they know that it's going to have to come up in the next kind of few years. So it's definitely kind of like, driven by a sense of urgency around tackling the technical debt of those legacy systems. I think the other point I just want to focus on is, we think a lot about CCM migrations as almost like as a have to, as an IT cost saving initiative or to tackle some of those legacy issues. There are huge benefits that can be gained from this as well. I don't want to lose sight of the positive side of that equation. And we'll speak a little bit about some of those when we share some of the case study stories. But definitely that increase in kind of like customer experience that newer, more modern communication systems can provide to the end customers of insurers and financial services institutions is a critical point. It's a critical decision-making criteria for a lot of these projects.
I think Aaron probably has a lot to say in terms of your current engagement at Beacon. So Aaron, you've sort of put the theory into practice here, so maybe you can expand on what's going on at Beacon.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything you said there, Chris, really resonates with me. Our effort is to get off of DocuMaker onto SmartCom. And a lot of that's driven by the outdated technology that you're talking about, limited integration, limited skills in that mainframe product, plus a long-term goal of actually get off the mainframe completely at Beacon. So yeah, all that resonates with me. Some of the drivers behind that, like you said, sense of urgency. As most things, you've got a renewal timing that comes up with contracts, and we're about a year out, maybe a year and a half out with our renewal with DocMaker, and so we also have a partnership already with SmartCom. We're using your products not probably as well as we should be, so part of our effort is to improve that. So all that's driving us to optimize, move off a DocuMaker, make some improvements on how we've done forms through SmartCom already. We're working with XValue. They've been a great partner with us on this effort and bring some great knowledge as well. But I'm not going to kid you, it hasn't come without challenges. Some of the challenges that we're trying to do as we decouple the form integration. So the way it was designed on SmartCom today, it's pretty much a one-to-one. The payload that is used for the form is exactly what's needed for that form. So we wanted to decouple that and create some standard schemas that we can use for things like policy, agent, bills, customers. The challenge is that's a little harder than it seems, right? You've got some base stuff that you can get about policies, but then how do you represent that across the whole organization? So that was one of our challenges. Another one of our challenges is we grouped too many forms together when we were building it. So we might build or develop, let's say 50, 100 forms, and then realize that when we go to the next group, we've got major changes to the schema that impacted how it was consumed by the SmartCom team, and it had a pretty big impact. So we should have done that a lot more iterative, get more lessons learned through the entire flow and make changes early rather than grouping them all together. And then some other things that are a little longer term challenges for us that we're seeing is we are on a mission to get off of DocuMaker to SmartCom. That's our primary objective. And with the time frame, we're not leveraging all the capabilities from SmartCom. So, for example, we want to honor customer preferences, but that's pretty hard to do. Well, it's easy to capture customer preferences. It's hard to honor them through all the legacy systems and everything. So it's very easy to say, hey, I want to get a text message from Pekin Insurance, but it's not so easy to say, well, what's a text message for a policy print document that's very large and complex. So that's some of the challenges that we've got. Some of the lessons learned is it's paying a lot of dividends for us by decoupling the input data from the form generation. So as we've standardized these and send a policy object, for example, across to SmartCom, they may be getting more information than they need at the time, but when later they change that form and they want some other element out of the policy object, it's just there. So that's paid a lot of dividends for us. The standard schemas I can't tell you enough about. It's been huge for us. The other thing that's been a good lesson learned is the more iterative. We need to do that in a very iterative learning style rather than batching them up. And the reason is because when you batch them all up and make a change and don't understand how those changes impact the either upfront population of the data or the downstream impacts the SmartCom team, it's pretty impactful from a time standpoint. So that's some of the big things, highlights from us, and we can get into any more as we talk through this.
Great. Thank you so much, Aaron. Actually, I'd like to sort of add a few of my own experiences which resonate exactly with what you were saying, right? Was involved in SmartCom implementation actually prior to it being called SmartCom. It's called Thunderhead back then. And this is I'm dating myself with that information, but we had the exact same problem that you tackled, which was that the legacy application and legacy correspondence generation was pretty much one-to-one. So there was a plethora of integration services, and we took the same approach as you did, which to build some standard APIs, and and I'm happy to say that it came off really well, just like it did for you. So that is one of those underappreciated payoffs you get with transformation. It makes it easier to maintain. The other part you mentioned about blocking those forms together, we did the same thing. I think we were lucky or made a fortuitous decision to actually analyze the fields required by all forms prior to designing the APIs. So the impact of changes was less. So this may have been one of the sort of inadvertent effects of following what was then what a waterfall methodology, right? So we did all the analysis up front rather than going through the agile mechanism of taking a block, and so sometimes it works out better that way. As part of X-Value, I think particularly methodology basically is like the four main steps that we try to follow to ensure a good transformation. This comes from all this experience. One is that you got to extract these rules, and this can emphasize how important this is, because with legacy systems, you have rules scattered all over the place. They've been built over time, so people have taken the most expedient approach. So there's rules at the time of there are rules embedded on the source side, in the ETL or in the API layer, and then often at the generation layer also. So getting those rules all out and standardizing them, even if you don't centralize them, at least standardize them and have governance around them. So that's so the extraction and the designing the governance structure is pretty important. The testing, we've got some accelerators. I'll talk about them maybe at a later point in the discussion. Testing is such a big part of forms transformation, because you've got to pay attention not just to the content but also to the formatting, and now with different channels and different media, you've got to test for different formats. So it's quite it can be quite tedious. It's a greater percentage than your normal development project. So that I think we've got some good accelerators. I'll talk about them later. And then finally, making making reusable blocks for the documents. I think you've done that too, and that really helps the maintenance, because there are some, especially the standard sort of legalese blocks that need to be updated once in a while, and then you don't if those are reusable, if they are standardized, you don't need to go touch all 100 forms. You just touch the block and update the block, and then it gets reflected everywhere at once. So some standard good practices. I think as we talk further, we kind of elaborate on some of these.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested, Nachi, in some of the technology that I think Exavalue has created around this topic. I suppose before we get there, Aaron, one question I had, well, actually a two-part question, if that's all right. One was, obviously you mentioned that you were coming up on the end of your contract with DocuMaker. How far out of that contract end date did you begin to start looking and planning for that transformation? And I think, were there any kind of tips that you could share with the audience around kind of like how you build that business case?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can't get too far out, right? For us, we were about 2.5 years out when we started planning, and the reason why that was so really important is the amount, and we've got thousands of forms in DocuMaker right now. So it's not a faint effort to just convert all these over, because if you're converting them like, which we did for a lot, but a lot of times you want to improve those. So it's a pretty big effort. So the further out that you can do it, for us, the business case was fairly straightforward. We already had SmartCom. You're a leading industry partner in this whole thing, so that was a no-brainer decision. And the cost savings to get off of DocuMaker was pretty self-evident. So the real challenge was, how much is it going to cost us to do it? Time and effort and focus and people. That's where Exavalue came in and helped us get a lot of lift. If we were to try to do this all internally, it'd have been pretty tough effort for us.
Okay, that's perfect. I suppose the other question, obviously you've got a finite amount of forms that you are bringing over from the legacy system, DocuMaker, over to Smart Communications. I suppose, what other metrics are you using to track success?
Bruce, your volume is fading.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You may want to repeat that question once you fix the volume.
Sure. Can you hear me better?
That's better.
Okay. So I suppose you've obviously got a finite amount of forms that you are looking to move over from DocuMaker over to Smart Communications, and that's a measure of success that you will track along the way of this project. What other measures, what other KPIs do you look at in your role to kind of point at how you're tracking and how you're measuring against the business case?
Yes, that's a good question. There's two sides that are really important to me. As I said, I've got the enterprise architecture stuff, so really focused on the upfront side, getting a pattern, standard APIs, as Nachi said, that are reusable across a wide variety of stuff, not just this effort, but for the future. So we measure that. We are taking the opportunity to do a lot of automation there. APIs in this case are really, really easy to, well, I should say easy. It's really important to automate them because we're sending a standard output to SmartCom. So in the future, we, like I said, decouple those two. So we're automating, taking that opportunity to automate so that we can get standard output. And then the rest is we're measuring our velocity at which we're doing this, which is really important because the amount of time it took us with the coupled version and the number of people to do it was very long, like months at times. We think we're going to get that down to days, and maybe sometimes not even have IT involved in the equation, just let the business change whatever forms they want. So those are probably the key things that we're measuring in this effort.
Okay, perfect. Nachi, maybe I can jump over to you, and you've obviously handled a lot of transformations, been a part of transformations yourself, but at ExaValue, I know that there are a handful of kind of transformation accelerators or migration accelerators that your team has developed. Do you want to just share with the audience a little bit about what you've built?
Absolutely, absolutely. So as I mentioned, we focused on the testing in the first wave of accelerators because, as I said earlier, testing is up to 50% of the effort in these forms transformations. It's a larger percentage than your normal project or program, because you have to test for different formats, different in your test format as well as the content. So we focused on basically, and there's multiple sort of steps involved. So there's the extraction and from the source data through typically an API layer. So we have an API validation accelerator which tests for the which compares, let's say, a flat file from a legacy system with the XML output from the API, and it automates that entire process, and it's really a huge saving in effort. And we do the same thing for data migration as well. So similar to the API validation, we have a tool which will test the the source and target data fields and ensure that the transformation is correct. So this is not just a like to like comparison. We'll also take into consideration any transformations that you may have built into the as part of the project. So that again is a major accelerator. So once you have that nailed down, you can at least be assured that the source fields are coming over, the fields are coming over in the right format, and the right number of fields are coming over. As far as format is concerned, we do have a document validation accelerator. So this is in the case you're doing a lift and shift, as I mentioned. So there'll be some percentage of forms that are just going to get converted over as they are. So there, the what you're testing for is that it should look exactly the same way as the legacy system generated documents look. And we have a PDF comparator which will do that, ensure that the format and the contents are exactly alike. This is a fairly tedious job, manual in the past, and then this can be a this really saves a lot of effort. Of course, where you have redesigned the forms, and many firms like Pekin take the opportunity to redesign forms when you're doing a transformation. There, it's not as usable, but there'll be a percentage of forms that can be validated with this. I'll also talk about what we are working on. As I mentioned, extraction of rules is a major exercise, and it's it's obviously manual because these rules are embedded in different systems. But with AI these days, you can generate code, but you can also read code and generate pseudocode or metadata, or you can generate the rules in natural language. So we are working on a rules extractor, which can read from different code sets and extract formatting rules. I think that's going to be a real game changer. And the team is working hard at it, and we expect that it'll be ready soon. So yeah, those are the things that we've been focusing on.
Yeah, I want to build on something that Nachi said that I think has also been a big boost for us in our integration layer. We're taking, I'll call it a low code approach, where we've externalized that key mapping fields, right? So key value pairs, that's externalized from the API so that we can make those changes, not have to update the API. So that and the rules as well. So by externalizing that, we're not having to change APIs all the time. We just go and change the data that's driving those APIs. That's a huge advantage as well.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, Nachi. I mean, we've, with the transformations that we've, been a part of with you as well. So, sometimes when you're doing a like for like, it's easy to get the content, the stylings, to a certain extent, the formats over, but oftentimes it is the business rules kind of driving that specific form or communication that is it's a little bit more challenging to extract.
Absolutely. And in there's a variety of platforms out there. Legacy is basically it's multi-layered. So we're trying to really make it a robust tool so that it can generate that it can address all kinds of code and data sets.
Yeah, and that process too, Chris, it's important that you're thinking about what place is the right place for the logic. Sometimes it's a legacy system, sometimes it's a mid-tier, sometimes it's SmartCom. But you get that wrong and put too much logic in SmartCom, you're asking too much of that tool, right? So you've got to balance where's the right place for the right type of logic. For example, we're saying simple stuff like state-specific form logic, that's in SmartCon, very simple if then else. But if you've got complex calculations, things like that need to summarize data in the schema or the form data coming in, then that's probably the integration layer. Very business logics belongs on the business side. That's how we approached it. But we really had to think about where's the right place for what logic, because to Nachi's point, in today's world, it's all just mushed together and you got to tease it out.
One of the other questions I just wanted to ask you, Aaron, if that's okay, you mentioned as you were evaluating a need to move on from DocuMaker, I think that I'm right in remembering that you mentioned that you were having a challenge with finding people with the appropriate skill sets. Is that right?
For DocuMaker, yeah.
For DocuMaker, yeah.
Yeah. That's mainframe in general, right? Is I don't know if it's dying or not. There's some people that try to breathe life into it and stuff, but for us, it just is not. It's not overall cost effective. We're pretty much moving towards more SaaS integrator. That's our sweet spot as a company. Other larger insurers may be staying on the mainframe, but so in general, getting DocuMaker skills, we use WSO2 in our integration layer. That's getting those skills that we didn't have. So the skill challenge is real for us, but most of it's related to the mainframe though, Chris.
Natty, maybe you can share just a little bit about some of the, maybe, I don't know, other examples of kind of successful transformations that you've been a part of, and kind of some of the key value that has come from those modernizations.
Absolutely, and Picken is obviously a flagship engagement for us. But in addition to Pekin, and in fact, probably one of the things that one of the reasons why we got Pekin was we did this major transformation for a sort of a specialty insurance carrier based in California. And there it was a soup to nuts engagement, meaning that we were engaged in not just redesign. We were engaged in everything, including the integration, the redesign of the forms, the testing, and the deployment, the rollout of those forms. So major savings. This is a Guidewire Insurance Now platform, which is a different product from Insurance Suite. Insurance Suite is a much larger has a much larger footprint, but Insurance Now comes with its own quirks, and we have a very strong Insurance Now practice. So we leverage that to its maximum, and obviously there's huge impact on the operational efficiency to begin with, and just the ease from an employee perspective, being able to view the documents within the iNow UI has been very well received. So that entire engagement was a was something that really is something that we're really proud of. And then on a different in a different sort of scale, I was personally involved. One of our early engagements was with this large regional carrier here in South California, where I was involved in the selection and the recommendation of the CCM platform. So it was more consulting engagement to begin with. They still do actually have some remnants of that legacy system, which was homegrown, built on .NET, and it was used mainly by their claims organization, very deeply embedded into their architecture. And they'd been trying to get out of that system for a while. So we did a system selection exercise, a lot of very detailed sort of feature comparisons. We did recommend Smartcom. They had licenses for the other products as well. So they decided to first try that other product with another competitor of Smartcom, but a little sort of more dated. Eventually found out that not all the use cases were as well met by that competing product. So they came back to our recommendation of Smartcom. So after that little detour, we got involved again in the implementation of the Smartcom for transformation, more on the integration side. We built out those standard APIs that we've spoken about earlier in this conversation. Again, just standardizing the API is always a major lift. It's like a knot that gets undone. So that was very well received. And then, of course, the testing, which thanks to our accelerators, is really expedited. So I think those are the two engagements, that soup to nuts implementation for the specialty insurance carrier, and then the product selection, and then the eventual implementation for the personal lines carrier. Those are the two, I think, marquee engagements I would talk about from an XOL perspective.
That's great. That's great. I mean, I know that we've worked with a number of projects with Exavalue in the past. I mean, I think, the other factor that, at least from a smart communication side, we often hear as a value benefit from these transformations is it's not just moving from one legacy solution to a more modern solution. It's also the consolidation of multiple communication applications within the business. And some of those are legacy, some of them are mainframe type, some of them are homegrown, as you said, but that consolidation can really drive benefits. We look at some of the operational metrics. I know we spoke about kind of like that one-to-one migration of certain forms and communications. We're big proponents as much as possible to take that opportunity to really kind of rethink and transform them. There are absolutely ways that you can begin to rationalize those templates down, right? As Aaron said, kind of like maybe there's state-specific logic that can easily go into ensuring that you have one template that can drive multiple communications or forms. So, we definitely work with our customers on looking at that rationalization benefit because we know it's not just at time of migration, it's at time of management past that point, right? So as Aaron says, a lot of that, the maintenance of those communication templates can now begin to go back into the business as updates and changes need to be implemented. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of value that can be driven by these efforts. Aaron, I'm just going to hand over to you just before I close out. Any last words or kind of like, one piece of advice that you would offer to anybody that's listening at the moment that might be thinking of moving specifically from DocuMaker off the mainframe or any type of legacy communications system?
Yeah, I think again we've hit on the the key topics on most of them. I think the last piece of that advice would be not trying to tackle every modernization. So, for example, we're not going as far as we need to on leveraging all the smart comm capabilities, but we took that major step that enables us to go to that next step. So, aside from all the stuff that Nachi and I talked about, the APIs and decoupling, and those are all just really good practices. But just don't try to bite off absolutely everything, especially if you got a large number like we do. So.
Yeah.
But put yourself in a position like us that the next step can be then fully leveraging a lot more capabilities that SmartCom has to offer, which are quite impressive.
And the other words of advice, obviously, work with a great partner like Exavali, right?
Yes.
Very kind of you.
Nachi, any kind of like last words of advice from you?
Well, pretty much what Aaron said. I would say that from the extraction is we've got to focus on that. So don't sort of rush in. You've got to make sure that you have all the data, all the rules extracted, and that's a fair bit of work. So that I think that's some effort that you need to account for. I absolutely agree with Aaron that sometimes you got to sort of measure pace yourself. So the forms redesign could be done in steps. It's sometimes there's often a backlog in legacy situations because people have been waiting to redesign forms forever. It takes just so long to update a form that people have just put that for later, deferred it, and the temptation is to sort of whole cloth redo those forms. Absolutely understandable, been involved in that myself, but then that makes the testing a little more, that makes the testing trickier. And also you never get the forms right. People tend to sort of tweak them when they see them. So that sort of puts, adds to the turnaround time. So I would suggest that just you got to prioritize the ones that you really want to redesign, and then keep and do the redesign in steps. We've spoken enough about the API redesign, but I'll say it again. Standardizing the APIs is a huge benefit that is underappreciated. So work with someone who can help you do that. And make sure they've got the right accelerators, because otherwise because the difference in effort is substantial, especially when it comes to testing. So make sure when you're picking a partner that they have a solution that addresses that particular part of the program.
Oh, perfect. Thank you both. I think the conversation was great. I think we learned a lot about some of the drivers for making decisions like this. I think we covered, definitely some of the challenges and some of the lessons learned in a very kind of real and frank way. I think it's a very kind of open discussion that we had. So thank you both for joining. Todd, I'll just hand it back to you if that's okay, just to close us out at the very end.
No, thank you very much. I also agree that it was a great session. This is being recorded, so this will be available through SmartCom and also through us. Please engage with us and follow up. This is an exciting topic. We're both very capable. Hopefully you found this valuable, and just stay connected. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. All right.